This is the Multi-Orgasmic Millionaire Podcast, the only sex podcast for 7- and 8-figure conscious leaders who want to embody their pleasure and to have the best sex of their lives. I'm Tilly Storm, top 20 sex coach in the world, and your host today. Welcome back, my loves. It's Tilly Storm, and I almost left this episode for Mother's Day, but I just couldn't wait because it's so good and juicy and so profound and deep and healing as well. But today we are talking about healing the mother wound as the key to unlocking intimacy and sexual pleasure. All right, my loves, this is a sensitive topic, but it is essential. And it is a key to unlocking epic sex. I know it kind of sounds crazy, like, how can my mother have anything to do with my experience of sex? Well, let me tell you, a lot. All right, how does that happen? Well, the mother wound, it refers to the emotional and the psychological scars that can be left by your relationship with your mother or simply a feminine figure, anything like that. And it can stem from a variety of experiences such as neglect, abandonment, abuse, or simply a lack of emotional availability or a lack of just showing up for you in the way that you really needed when you were a kid. And these wounds can leave a really nasty scars of us feeling rejected, unworthy, disconnected from our sexuality, all of these things. So how does a mother wound even happen? Well, some examples are, well, I grew up not knowing anything about pleasure. And because no one ever talked about pleasure, pleasure was important. Pleasure was for someone else. Well, who did I learn that from? My mother, right? All right, so this is kind of how it goes down in the psychology. I know it can not be the most fun thing to dive into. I've talked about inner child on the podcast several times, many times, about how our inner child often creates our current sexual experiences. And until we choose to heal that and identify as a queen or an empowered sex goddess or something else, we tend to experience our sexuality through the lens of what our younger self adopted about pleasure and sexuality. And one of the other really big pieces about that is how we are integrated with our inner feminine. Are we living as the divine feminine herself, or are we living as a wounded inner feminine that we inherited and picked up from our mother? So today I'm going to take you through the process that I actually take my personal clients through to heal their mother wound and to release the narrative and the story from their mother that is impeding their sex life and their relationship, and how I go about empowering them into their divine feminine version of themselves so that they're no longer experiencing their sexuality and relationship through the lens of what their mother taught them, but now they are experiencing their sexuality and their relationship through the lens of the divine feminine herself. So if you are someone who experiences trust issues, if you experience difficulty in forming intimate connections at all, maybe you're one of these high-powered feminine boss babes that hasn't had a boyfriend in a decade. There are many of you out there, right? If you experience any sexual dysfunctions, such as lack of desire, low libido, difficulty reaching orgasm, not having an orgasm at all, I want you to pay attention, because as weird as this might sound, what you learned from your mother early on is very, very likely impacting your experience right now. So the first step to healing the mother wound is to become aware of what is her story that you have adopted and made your own versus what is the story about your sexuality and relationship and pleasure that you know to be true in your head, but you don't feel as true in your body. So what I mean here is, if you got taught nothing about pleasure growing up, then it's likely you have this story that your pleasure doesn't matter. It's always about him. I'm just here to service him and his pleasure, or whatever it is for you. This is just an example, okay? So if that's the story that you got growing up that we don't talk about pleasure, so therefore it must be for someone else. I want you to notice if you can separate what you got growing up from what you know to be true about pleasure right now. Okay, if you don't know that pleasure can be for you, if you don't know that if you are not in your pleasure, you're actually incapable of thriving. If you don't already know these things, then I want you to go to a sex educator and start learning about these things to start, because I can't convince you of these truths, right? Like, I'm not here to convince anyone of trying to make a truth out of something that doesn't feel true to you. If your religion taught you that your pleasure doesn't matter and you're just here to service your partner, there's really nothing I can do with that if that's what you truly believe. But for people who have a belief like, okay, yeah, that's crazy, I know that's not true, I know my body was designed for pleasure, I have a clitoris with no other function than to experience pleasure, and men don't even have an organ on their body with no other function than to experience pleasure. Their penis is used for other things, whereas a clitoris doesn't have any other function other than pleasure, right? So even your biology shows you that you were designed to experience pleasure. So if you have the belief system that you are here to experience pleasure, but there's this part of you and there's this story inside of you that believes, well, that's not what I got taught though. What I got taught is that it doesn't matter. And then I want you to just notice how you can separate what you got taught from the thing that you know to be true. And the thing that you got taught isn't even your own story. So just notice for a second, and this might kind of blow your mind if you've never really thought about this before, but just take a moment to notice how the story that, for example, pleasure isn't for me, just notice how that isn't even your story. That is not even your truth. So if that's the case, whose story and whose truth was it? That's right. It was my mom's. Okay. So that's the mother wound right there. That is a mother wound affecting your sex life and your relationship right now. So step one was to become aware that the story that you have from the past, the belief that you have in the past, that it's not even yours, because you might have the belief that that's ridiculous, I know better than that, okay, then you're seeing the difference and you can separate the past story from what you actually know to be true right now. Now, the second step, and what I take clients through, is to do a full-on purge of what that did to them, okay? So we're going to continue with the example of, I didn't get taught anything about pleasure, therefore my pleasure doesn't matter, and I'm just here to be a vessel for men to experience pleasure in, okay? So if that's the story that I got taught from my mom, I'm going to envision my mother on my left side. And I'm going to envision her there, and I'm going to feel all of the pain, anger, and sadness from having believed that story, having adopted that story for so many years. And I'm going to express to her, not actually her, but you're just envisioning, like, like you would write a letter and burn it, but not actually give it to her, right? So it's kind of the same thing. It's just a purge process where you're going to literally share with her all of the pain, anger, and sadness that you have experienced in your life because of that adopted belief system that you got from her. So, for example, Mom, I can't believe, I went through my entire freaking life believing that my pleasure didn't matter, that I was here just to be in service to men, that nothing I did mattered as long as I was a good wife and a good mom. What bullshit is that? I've lived my whole life trying to please and appease other people, and now I don't even know where's pleasure for me? I'm being told that I should be experiencing all these different types of orgasms, and I should have all this access to pleasure, and then I should be this turned on woman, and yet I don't feel any of that because you taught me that that wasn't for me, that I didn't get to have that, right? And so I would just be expressing how I truly feel about what she taught me about pleasure. And when you're done with that purge, then I have my clients move to the other side and notice their mother figure on the other side. And then I have them express whatever they're grateful for, anything they love about what their mom may have taught them about pleasure. And for some people, there's nothing. There's literally nothing they could be grateful for about what their mother taught them about pleasure or sex or relationship or intimacy or connection or whatever. And they don't have anything to say. And that's totally fine. Okay, you can't force appreciation and love and gratitude when it doesn't feel true to you. So I don't want you to force something, but also a lot of people do have appreciation and love for what their parents may have taught them about pleasure that may not have been sexual pleasure, but maybe, my mom, for example, she loved to go on adventures. She loves to travel. And she taught me that, it's okay to do those things, that you can take time to yourself. You can take vacations and you can let yourself enjoy adventure and travel and fun and play, right? So that would be one thing that I would share with her through this process of healing my mother wound, that, okay, thank you, Mom, for showing me that, like, traveling and adventures and having fun and going on these trips, that it's okay to do those things, right? So that's one thing I would share that I'm grateful for. And then the next step is to release the mother story completely. So you would just let the mother figure that's in your mind's eye just kind of dissipate. And then you're going to move into feeling inside of your body. Okay, where do I feel the most feminine in my body? Where do I feel that the divine feminine lives inside of my body? And wherever it is, okay, a lot of women, it's in their chest, their heart, or their breast area. But some women, it's not, and it's totally fine. It doesn't matter. So you're just feeling and tuning into your body. Where do I feel the divine feminine lives within me? And then you literally project what the divine feminine looks like. What does she even look like inside of you? So if you don't have this mother story about pleasure, let's get in touch with, what does your divine feminine have to say about pleasure? What does she think? What's her story about it? Okay, well, let's find out. Okay, so you have this divine feminine that already lives inside of you. So you're just projecting it in front of you, and you're getting in touch with, okay, what does she look like? What does the divine feminine look like when I look at her? What do I feel as I see her, as I witness her? This may have been the first time you have ever noticed what your divine feminine is like. It might be the first time that you've ever connected with her at all. Okay? And when you see her, you might want to go paint her. You might want to go draw a picture. You might be really inspired in a creative project here. And that's totally fine to do after. But just noticing, like, what does your divine feminine even look like? And then you're going to step into her narrative. You're going to embody her. So if you could fully take on your divine feminine self, fully embody her and act as her and speak as her, what would she say to present moment self? What would she say to your present moment self about what pleasure means? And this is the story. So whatever your divine feminine says is a story that you are going to want to adopt, because she is the one that has the accurate, the embodied, the divine narrative of what pleasure or whatever it is you're working on, of what that means from a healed, a whole perspective, not from a wounded, fractured version of whatever bullshit your mom got taught that she happened to pass on to you, right? So you're connecting with that divine feminine aspect and getting her story. What's her narrative about pleasure? Oh, okay. My divine feminine says, oh my God, Tilly, you were made for pleasure and play. You were made to experience all of the delicious pleasure and ecstasy that this body has to offer. You're here to experience all of the joy, all of the fun, all of the ease, all of the surrender, all of this ocean of pleasure that is available to you. It's totally for you. It's not just for men. Men get to have it too, but so do you. You aren't excluded from this, right? So I'm just letting this divine feminine stream from my consciousness. And it's, as you're doing this, you're literally rewriting the narrative. You're rewriting the story. You are healing that mother wound, by allowing that divine feminine aspect to come out and to fully embody her and find out what is the new story that I do get to adopt, okay? So then inviting your divine feminine back into you and feeling that she is fully in support of you experiencing her narrative, and that she's fully in support of you no longer being held back by the wounded mother version of what pleasure meant to your mom, okay? And through that process, you're delineating the old story from the new story. And then you're able to reparent the part of yourself that needs a new story, right? Okay, you're writing a new story in real time from your present moment awareness. You're writing a new story of what pleasure means to you, and then integrating that old aspect of you, that, you know, that old story that you picked up from your mom that's no longer helping you have a great sex life, or that's no longer helping you experience all of the pleasure that there's to experience here in this body. So my loves, it is an insider's look at what actually happens in a coaching session when we're really diving into the inner mother wound and narrative, and how we actually shift it for people to step into and embody their divine feminine and no longer be held back by this bullshit narrative around pleasure and sex and relationship. So my loves, if you've never dove into this stuff before, I want you to know that this is the work. This is what it really takes. This is what we do in my signature program, Sex Goddess, 5 months to total freedom in the bedroom. This is the coaching. This is the support that is really required to shift your narrative out of the bullshit stories and to begin to embody the new narrative and the new story, so that you can experience and unlock all of the intimacy, all of the sexual pleasure that you're here to experience in this lifetime. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, I want you to book the pleasure assessment call that I'll tell you about in just a second. All you got to do is go to the link in the show notes, and here's a little bit more about the call. All right, see you next week, my loves. Bye. Hey there, conscious leader. Are you serious about up-leveling your sex life and relationship right now? Then you are in luck, because if you have been on the personal growth and development path for some time now, maybe you've been to therapy, or maybe you're even a coach, a healer, an entrepreneur, or a therapist yourself, and you're wanting to embody your pleasure more deeply and become a multi-orgasmic millionaire yourself, then I want to invite you to a 1-hour complimentary pleasure assessment call with me that you can book at the link in the show notes, or at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/pleasure assessment. In the pleasure assessment call, I'm going to take a full diagnosis of your present moment and past experiences with sexuality and relationships. And then we'll dive into your top goals and desires for these areas of your life. From there, I'll be able to give you your top 2 to 5 blocks and obstacles in the way of you creating these goals and desires, and give you the exact next steps that you get to take to overcome them, and that you must take to overcome them. I have done over 700 of these calls, so there is literally nothing I have not heard. I know it can be hard to talk about these things and to crack the door open on your sexuality and talk about it, so that's why I want you to feel as comfortable as possible to open up and share with me. This is a private call, it's just you and I. So if you're someone who wants to feel more confident and sexy in your body, to tap into your feminine energy and bring that into your business, to increase your sexual desire and drive, to get out of your head into your body, to learn how to manifest with your sexual energy, to have mind-blowing orgasms in different ways, or maybe just to reignite the spark with your long-term partner, then book your complimentary pleasure assessment call with me today at the link in the show notes, or at bit.ly, that's bit.ly/pleasure assessment. I'll see you there.